My name is Clark Reynolds. I'm 62 years old, and last year my only daughter looked me in the eye and gave me an ultimatum. Either serve her husband like a butler, or leave the very house I built with my savings. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't even ask her why. I just smiled. I walked to my room, opened the closet, and pulled out the old suitcase I hadn't touched in years. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure you subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. That moment, me dragging that suitcase down the hallway while they watched, in silence, was the moment my life split in two. They thought they'd won. They had no idea. I remember it clearly. I had just come back from the grocery store. My wrists were burning from the weight of the bags cutting into my skin. I pushed through the front door, hoping to set everything down and rest. Instead, I saw Harry, my son-in-law, slouched, in my leather recliner, beer in hand, his feet up on the table. That chair wasn't just any chair. It was the last gift my wife, Martha, had given me before cancer took her. Seeing him sprawled in it, half drunk like he owned the place, sent something cold crawling up my spine. Without even looking at me, he said, "Grab me another beer while you're up, and make it a Corona. Not that cheap stuff you drink." The words landed like a slap. I had bought those Coronas for him with my own Social Security money. Money I shouldn't have been spending, but did, just to keep the peace. I set the grocery bags down on the counter. "Harry, I just walked in. Let me put these away first." Finally, he turned his head, smirk on his face. "What's the big deal? You're already standing. Don't be difficult." Before I could reply, Tiffany, my daughter, walked in from the kitchen. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, her hair pulled back the same way Martha used to do when she cooked. But the expression on her face wasn't Martha's warmth. It was annoyance. "What's going on?" she asked. Harry gestured toward me without taking his eyes off the TV. "Your dad's giving me attitude. I asked him to grab me a beer. That's all." Tiffany's eyes landed on me. Not with love. Not even with patience. With disappointment, as though I were the child here. "Dad, it's just a beer. Can you not make this into something bigger than it is?" The anger in me boiled, but I kept my voice level. "This is my house. I've put my whole life into this roof, into you. And now your husband thinks I'm his servant." Harry stood, towering over me, his smirk hardening. "Funny, because Tiffany and I live here. We pay the bills. You're just here." Tiffany stepped closer, her hand on his arm like they were a united front against me. "Dad," she said, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it, "you need to decide right now. Either you help Harry and do what he asks, or you can pack your things and leave." For a moment, everything froze. I stared at her face, searching for the little girl who used to curl up in my lap during thunderstorms. The one who once told me I was her hero. But all I saw was Harry's arrogance reflected in her eyes. And then I smiled, not with joy, with clarity. "All right," I said. Harry grinned, thinking he'd won. "Good. Now about that beer." I cut him off. "I'll pack." The grin slipped from his face. Tiffany's mouth fell open. They had expected me to crumble, to bow my head and obey. Instead, I walked down the hallway with steady footsteps, leaving the groceries where they were. In my room, I pulled the old suitcase down from the closet shelf. I hadn't used it since Martha and I went to Yellowstone on our honeymoon. The zipper creaked as I opened it. I packed slowly, deliberately. A few clothes, my medications, my reading glasses, and then the important things. Martha's framed photo, wrapped carefully in tissue paper. My leather journal where I had tracked every single expense I'd spent. On Tiffany and her husband, the down payment for their house, the tuition checks, the monthly bills I quietly covered when they struggled, and finally, the set of keys. The keys they didn't realize still tied this house to me. When I rolled the suitcase back down the hallway, the living room was silent. Harry sat stiff in the chair now, watching me with narrowed eyes. Tiffany stood near the kitchen, her arms crossed, uncertainty flickering across her face. I stopped at the door. "One day," I said quietly, "you'll understand the cost of this choice." And then I walked out. The Pine Lodge Motel smelled faintly of mildew, but it was clean. The bed was firm, the room small. It wasn't home, but it was mine. I lay there that first night, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. All the sacrifices. The $40,000 college tuition I worked overtime to pay. The $25,000 wedding I covered because Harry's family couldn't afford their share. The $80,000 down payment I gave them for this house. My retirement money, my time, my sweat, all gone, and now I was the unwanted guest. But what they didn't know, what Harry and all his arrogance had never asked, was that when I signed that check for the down payment, my name had gone on the deed. Co-owner. Half the house was mine. The calls started a week later. First, Tiffany, then Harry. "Dad, we need to talk." "Clark, call me back. Please, just hear me out." I let the phone ring. I let the messages pile up, because I already knew what was happening. Without my monthly help, the bills were drowning them. Harry's paycheck wasn't enough. The mortgage notices were coming. Groceries were running thin. Their perfect little life was unraveling, and the more they begged, the calmer I became. "Tell me something. What would you do if your own child betrayed you like this? Would you forgive her? Or would you let her feel the weight of her choices?" 3 weeks later, I walked into my lawyer's office with the leather journal under my arm. I laid it on his desk, page after page of expenses recorded in my neat handwriting. And then I reminded him of the deed. Within a month, the house was listed. Within 3, it was sold. The day Tiffany called me in hysterics, screaming that strangers were moving into her house, I sat on the motel bed with the window open, letting the breeze wash over me. She sobbed into the phone. "How could you do this to us?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I just said, "It was never yours to begin with." We met once more, Tiffany and I. She asked me to sit with her at a cafe. She looked tired, thinner, her eyes ringed with sleepless nights. "Dad," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." Harry pushed. "Me?" He twisted things. "Please, can we go back?" I held her hand, and for a moment I saw my little girl again. My heart ached. But then I remembered Harry's smirk in my chair, Tiffany's voice cold with that ultimatum. "I gave you everything," I told her softly. "A home, a future, my love. And you chose a man who treated me like a servant. Now you'll have to learn to live without both." Her sobs filled the cafe, but I stood and walked out, my chest heavy but my steps steady. These days, I live in a small cottage on the edge of town. The walls are plain, the furniture simple, but every corner feels like peace. Neighbors stop by to chat. I play chess in the park with old friends, and every evening when I sit with Martha's photo on the table beside me, I know I made the right choice. They thought they had broken me with their ultimatum, but in the end, it was their own lives that shattered. Subscribe for daily stories that hit hard, and don't forget to turn on the bell. You won't want to miss what happens next.